to be accepted and to be published reflects the quality of the research, reflect the quality of the research process that you have undergo, and it will be considered as a value added, especially during your job searching stage. Well, I can see quite a few names here. Some of them is quite familiar. I mean, some of them were my students, and some of them were, my PhD and master students. Some of them were my coursework students, and perhaps we have a few other coming from perhaps other universities and institutions. I'll go straight away to, I'm allowed to share my screen, yeah?
Yes, yeah, Dr. Hafiz.
Okay, great. So, yep. Okay. So again, a very brief introduction. My name is Hafiz. You always can call me Hafiz. Yep. And a little bit about myself. I actually, my background is actually in economics. Yep. And then I did my PhD in hospitality and tourism management. And I am currently the editorial board of quite a few journals. Yep. And I think the reason being why I'm here is because I love doing research. I love doing publication. And I always encourage my students to publish. Just to share a little bit about what happened this morning. Today, I received an email for me to sign the authorship agreement for my master by coursework students. Nabila, she graduated last semester, and her paper has been accepted to be published this year by a Q2 journals. Yeah. So I'm not trying to brag, but I'm trying to showcase that research done by master by coursework has the quality and the ability to be published. I mean, again, if the paper is published, meaning because prior to the publication, there has been reviewed by experts, and this expert believe that such study, such finding, such implication, is good enough for their readers. Yep, and I am actually motivating all of you to consider publication as one of your KPIs, one of the things that you must do prior to your graduations. And looking forward, today I was given this topic, systematic reviews, methods, and publication possibilities. Well, frankly, I'm not an expert in SLR. You know, if you want me to teach you the methodology, the process and procedures, I will not doing that today. But what I'm going to show to you, what are systematic reviews? Yep, and what are the type of reviews that are available? And I'll be sharing few examples of my own publication that adopt this concept of publications. Yeah. So moving forward, I'll start with the learning objective of these sessions. Yeah. I hope at the end of this session you'll be able to you will be able to understand the key challenges, formulate an answerable question about effectiveness of intervention studies, develop strategies for searching electronic database, and how to synthesize the evidence from primary studies and formulate conclusion and recommendation, and perhaps evaluate the quality of a systematic review when you read one. Yeah? And I will start with this statement. A systematic literature review is often the first and essential step in research process. That's the reason why every students that I supervise, as soon as they are able to identify the research areas, we are talking about title, we're talking about research areas. As soon as they are able to identify their research areas and what are the issues pertaining to that particular research areas, I will straight away ask them to do some sort of like systematic literature review. I'll be sharing you an Excel file that I actually will always share with my students for them to read through and to identify articles, journal articles, papers, theses that actually relates to their study, because by doing that, you will be able to grasp some important information, such as who are the leaders, the research leaders in that particular area. What are the emerging topics or issues, or perhaps methodology that has been used by this study, and what are their findings? How their findings actually does their study have some sort of like vital implication, especially within this era? And from there, you can actually identify your gaps, especially in terms of the methodological gaps, the practical gaps, managerial gaps, yep, theoretical gaps, yep. And by having those information, you could be able to formulate your problem statement, you synthesize your problem statement, where at the end of the day, it will create a strong research questions. And moving forward, the reason why the faculty, the faculty under Dr. Nur Hidayah and also Dr. Azmin, I mean, they propose this topic because actually SLR helps you to determine what is already known about your proposed research topic. Because at the end of the day, we have seen this type of students who actually have limited ability to search literature. Yeah, and most of the time they are doing it. I mean, perhaps they are novice, but at the end of the day, as a master student, as a PhD student, you should know how to search literature accordingly. You know, and you should know what are the we say journals that carry topics. And the reason being is that because these are the journals that will be the destination of your article. Yeah, and perhaps beside that, SLR also appraise the quality of the research evidence. I mean, we know that there are different type of articles quality, and the scope of article also differ. But with the proper SLR, you actually can appraise what have been found, what are the mainstream researchers are doing, what are the outliers of the findings, and how those information actually benefits you in formulating your thesis. And the third is to synthesize the research evidence from studies of the highest quality. And this is where actually the reason why I keep on urging my students to do this SLR. Yeah, I mean, usually they will do it in their first year. Yeah? And the reason is that because we want to identify all the articles, all research that has been done in that particular area. But at the end of the day, we want to cite the quality one. We want to refer to the quality one. And by doing that, by doing SLR, you could actually eliminate unnecessary articles that actually does not possess any quality, does not offer any new inputs, and perhaps there are also characteristics of articles that you should eliminate, papers that are not indexed by Scopus or the OSINT, and there are also agencies to focus more on these A journals. Yeah, we call it ABCD, ASEAN Business. I'll get the acronym correct later. Abbreviations. Yeah. And the fourth one is to identify the research gap and the priorities for generating new evidence. Again, as I've told you earlier, the best part of doing SLR is the ability to churn out gaps. Yeah. I mean, if you are reading from 50 to 100 papers, I mean, I hope you are not shocked that it is norm for PhD student to read around 100 to 200 papers throughout their PhD journey. And when we talk about reading, doesn't mean that you have to read from back to front to back. So, I mean, again, by doing this meta-analysis, this SLR, you will be able to synthesize, yeah, the G's of these papers in a much quantitative ways. And we try to avoid unnecessary duplication of research. I mean, if you found that your research topic has been well researched, I mean, even the current research claim that there is nothing new about this topic. And so that's actually a good input telling you that you should stop doing this. You should search for other things. You should search for new things. And with that, with those inputs, it will allow you to shape your future research project and inform your research plan. Okay. And the advantage of doing SLR is actually to resolve controversy between conflicting studies. You will find that definitely. I mean, if you look back I mean, perhaps based on my experience, I've seen papers that were published multiple times. I mean, telling the same thing. I've seen studies that actually utilize irregular methodologies. But again, the biggest concern is that the findings are conflicting with each other. So this is another concern. I mean, the advantage of SLR is to acknowledge those conflicting, which creates some finding gaps, where perhaps there are some reason why several studies found this and other studies were contradicting with these results. Again, gap is the keyword of research. Yep. Trends, we want to see where this topic is moving towards, what have been left behind, what have been abandoned by researchers, and perhaps what are the underpinning theories that have been used, yeah, for the past 20 to 30 years. And that's actually provide a reliable basis for decision making. So again, the question is why must I do SLR? Yeah, I believe that as a student, doing SLR will allow you to deepen your knowledge, especially in your research field. Yep. If you ask any PhD students or any doctors around, if you ask who are their core, their researcher, the researcher that actually pioneer, who actually spearhead their research area, I mean, they will be able to tell you because they know their stuff. I mean, if you ask me personally, I know that my guru will be Brian Ritchie, Roberto Croes, you know, Metin Kozak, and perhaps for UTAU, I mean, talking about technology adoption, they will always refer to Venkatesh and also Parasuraman for service quality. This is actually the reason why you should do this. And you need to you are able to identify the most important authors and what are the journals and conferences that publish these papers, this research, and this will be your target journals, your target conference for you to publish your findings. Yeah, and for early researchers, it's actually good to do SLR to understand a phenomenon. I mean, you could do that. Yeah. And for matured researcher like me, we always do SLR to search for emerging topics. What's new? What will be the in thing in the next 5 years? And the reason why you can see a lot of SLR papers were published since 2019, the reason being first is because it is facilitated by technology development. Most of these papers are available in online database. Yep. And I mean, the knowledge on how to process this data is made available. And last but not least will be the reason is COVID-19, because during COVID-19, no one is allowed to do primary data collection, yeah, with the borders closing and everything. So the only data that they have is the past research, and therefore they start doing historical data collections, and they try to, what we say, at least produce some new knowledge to the research world. Yeah. Okay, and there are many types of reviews actually. I mean, there are argument what is there are systematic literature review, there are meta-analysis. So what does this mean? Yeah, I mean, talking about reviews, we have literature review, we have narrative, we have literature, we have traditional on how you are going to report in your thesis. Usually the basic structure of chapter 2 literature review section will be the introducing the research area and start to tune it down into the variables that you are looking at, and perhaps you highlighted what are the theories or underpinning theories that have been used, and decide which underpinning theory that you are going to adopt, or perhaps maybe multiple theories that you're going to merge and unify it in. And next will be the hypothesis development, where you're going to argue what other people said and you're going to propose your research hypothesis. And the more in-depth the reviews will be the systematic reviews, and there are also another thing, we have scoping reviews, meta-analysis, but again the basic is SLR and meta-analysis, where you can see that some of the methodologies is quite similar, but they are presenting different findings. So what are they? First, we have annotated bibliographies. This is usually what you have been doing previously. I mean, I've done that during my PhD. To just summarize what are these papers. And beside that, I also did descriptive or narrative review, where it's a review without explicit protocol. I mean, it goes back on how when you read what you just read what you consume from it. It's like an opinion piece. Basically, it's your opinion on what do you understand about this paper. But the two, we say, a much rigid reviews are systematic review, where you review papers that has been collected and appraised, appraisals in a systematic protocol-driven manner. There are steps that you have to follow, yeah. And if you want to move beyond that, you start doing meta-analysis, where you, beside doing a systematic review, you extracted the data, the data from the paper, and you pull it and reanalyze it, perhaps using statistical analysis. So these are the type of reviews, and I hope that at least at the end of the session, you understand what are they and what differentiate them, and which one that you would like to pursue for your studies. And a narrative review, usually written by expert in the field, use informal and subjective method to collect and interpret information, and usually it summarizes the evidence. So this is actually what we hope to see in your literature review, because at the end of the day, you will be the expert in the field, and you've been using a lot of informal and subjective methods to collect and interpret the information in the chapter 2. And usually you will summarize what you found. And a systematic review is actually a review of evidence on a clearly formulated question, meaning that when you want to do this SLR, you must have some question. What do you want to know? So perhaps you can start off with what are the trends of research? What are the methodology that have been used by past research? So from there, you have some sort of like boundaries of what you are going to look at and what you're going to report. And we talk about critically appraise this primary research and extract and analyze the data from studies that were included in that particular review. So a very clear differentiation between SLR and narrative reviews is: first, systematic review investigate a clearly defined topic or question. Narrative focus on providing an overview of an area. Secondly, systematic reviews were gathered using explicit search protocol. But for narrative, they use some sort like, they don't have any specific protocols. Yeah. And systematic reviews also focus on protocol that specifies inclusion and exclusion criteria, meaning that they will exclude articles that does not fit their inclusion criteria. But for narrative review, that doesn't have any explicit protocols. Yeah. And perhaps a narrative review also, I mean, they grade the evidence that they found may be applied to certain individual studies. However, systematic review, it was synthesized through a meta-analysis. Yep. And systematic review also, I mean, while doing systematic review, when your evidence is lacking, the authors usually recommend further research. However, for narrative, the authors usually make recommendation based on what actually they think the reason being of why such studies were lacking or limited. Yep. And a meta-analysis in specifically is a statistical method. You can see that the keywords that there is statistical method, meaning that there are some sort of like data analysis that will happen during meta-analysis, which result from the relevant publication selected in the systematic review. I mean, if you want to move forward from SLR, you should do meta-analysis. And remember that not all systematic review use meta-analysis because some of them are quite descriptive. And it is actually, meta-analysis is much powerful, yeah, because it determines the magnitude of a quantifiable effects attributable, so, such as a drug, a behavioral intention, and etc. So after talking about the benefits, the good part of SLR, let's talk about the limitations. So again, SLR doesn't actually provide the definite answer because somehow result may be still inconclusive. Yeah, because there might be no evidence found, or I mean trial or research may be poor quality. I mean papers that you found may be coming from third world countries who are not indexed. Yeah. I mean, we're talking papers that are published by third world countries. We are talking about papers that are authored. There are a lot of papers authored by third world countries, authors that are good, but most of them were published by the First Nations. I mean, the first world countries. Yeah, and somehow they found out that yeah, this proposition intervention research was too complex to be tested. Yeah, and that actually will affect the study findings. Yeah? And there are the procedures of doing this systematic review is first to plan the review. I mean, what you should do, and these are the things that actually should be described explicitly in your paper. Plan the review, what you want to see. Are you looking at certain gaps? And formulate the research question. Yeah, I mean, this is where actually I keep on telling my students that you are doing a study in a study. Your PhD, but you are doing in chapter 2, you are doing a small scoping study that focus on the literature review, and do a comprehensive search. So you need to be very clear the search engine, what type of search engine that you're going to use. There are people who propose to use Google Scholar. There are some of people who propose to search using specific search engines such as the Web of Science and Scopus publications. Need to make sure that there's unbiased selection and abstraction process. And then there must be critical appraisal of the data. There must be some sort of like a procedures for you to analyze them, synthesize of data and interpretation of the results. So perhaps let's assume that you want to do this. I mean, I got this information from a colleague of mine from medical. So the main question is, what is the state of the art of the use SLR in bioinformatics? So this paper actually want to know, they're not reviewing research, they want to review papers that use that SLR papers. They only review SLR papers in the bioinformatics. So the objective was to search in the literature if example of systematic review applied for bioinformatics analysis exists. What are the inclusion criteria? Meaning that studies that mention systematic analysis to collect biological data. So if you want to convert this into your tourism study, let's try to adapt these protocols. So let's assume that the main question is that what is the state of the art of the use of SLR in tourism research? The objective was to search in the literature if example of systematic literature review applied for tourism research exists. So the inclusion criteria must talk about studies that mention systematic analysis of the literature to collect tourism data. The paper describes some tourism sub-areas such as marketing, economics, policy makings. Next, the paper suggests the use of tourism tools to analyze tourism-based data. I mean, they are using tourism-related tools. Yeah? And the paper suggests the collection of data from perhaps tourism database and studies that contain the keywords tourism and systematic literature review. The exclusion criteria, the paper is not declared as systematic literature review, meaning that any paper that are empirical would not be included in your data collection. Study is not in English, meaning that any article that was published in Malay language, in Arabic, in Chinese language would not be included. And the paper does not describe any tourism approach. Published data not available. And specific question, these are the question: is the paper clearly described as an SLR? Does the paper clearly present the restricted methods of SLR? Does the paper main question involve any tourism area? Is mentioned in the paper some of say tourism database? Is cited in the paper of some tourism related tools? Yeah. So this is actually how you decide, yeah, your protocols. And that's actually well accepted ways of doing systematic review, which is we call it Prisma. For you ITEM staff, this is not the same as Prisma, where you upload your articles, published article. This Prisma reflects a preferred reporting item for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. So the Prisma statement is essential reading before the starting a systematic literature review. Usually, editors all around the world expect authors to use Prisma. I mean, this is the most popular one. I mean, most of my recent publication did elaborate about Prisma methodology, in the method section. And this Prisma checklist will guide you on how to develop a systematic review protocol and what to include when writing up your review. So this is the Prisma flow diagram. It records identified to database searching, how many actually were found through your database searching. Do you search in other sources? Include that, and check for records after duplicates removed. Yeah, if you are looking on Scopus here and Web of Science, there will be duplication, and this is where you remove the duplication. And how many record was screened? How many record was excluded? How many were based on your identification? How many of them have full text accessible for you? And how many of them, how many of the papers full papers are not obtainable. Yep. And then you will start using these numbers to use on the qualitative synthesis, and what are the studies, how many of them are included in the quantitative synthesis. So this is where you can stop for SLR, but if you're doing meta-analysis, you're going to report quantitative data. Yep. So example here on the right actually shows that these are the record that actually identified through the PubMed. Yeah, this is actually a search engine, and the record identified through Science Direct, another search engine. So they have 207 data. Yeah, if this combination, we have 232, 152 plus 80, 232. But after duplication removal, 207 were found to be legit. And then after being screened, you exclude because of the title, because of abstract, diagonal reading. And from there, only 12 were assessed for eligibility. And the problems that 4 of them were not obtainable. I mean, we cannot obtain the full text article. Henceforth, only 8 papers were included in the study. So you can see, I mean, from the original search, yep, they found 232 papers that actually fit the keywords, but at the end of the day, only 8 were included. That shows that these 8 is actually papers that really reflect the keywords. At the same time, is clean, verified, the legitimacy, and also the quality. Okay, so the process of SLR: first, formulate the problem, develop and validate the review protocol. Next, search the literature, screen for inclusion, assess the quality, extract the data, and analyze and synthesize the data. And if you found that it is insufficient, you need to restart back with identify the problem and the research question. And last but not least is to report the review. So to be specific, I would suggest you to define your research question, goals, what you aim to do, what are the inclusion and exclusion criteria. This is very important. Yeah, this is actually similar with your REC, inclusion and exclusion, but that REC form focus on your unit of analysis, who are the respondent that you can say you can invite to join your study, or respondent that should not be included in your study. But for this particular SLR papers, we are talking about papers. What are the articles that should be included or should be excluded from this review? The scientific database, there are a lot of scientific database. Access the quality of this result and gather the most outstanding result in order to analyze, discuss, and learn from them. So the key elements of SLR is the review protocol. Yeah, how you specify the research question, and what are the methods, how are you going to conduct the data collection, the search strategy on how to search it, using keywords, using unique keywords. Yeah, you know, there's a lot of things that can be used. Let me stop sharing here and let me share my screen again. So so here you can see that this is the norms, the normal Google Scholar. And if you want to see between tourism, okay, and let's say culture. So this is actually the output of a very basic search strategy. I mean, there's actually a way for you to look on this based on the range of time, sort by date, where it will list the most recent paper published within this topic. Yep, 2022. And perhaps you can focus on review articles. But the best way to search for what we say what the specific type of paper is by using this advanced search. I mean, you can always go with Science Direct. Sorry. Oh, I think I missed this. Let me rephrase this. Perhaps you want to see coming from Elsevier. So you can see here when I set my advanced search where I only focus on returning articles published in Elsevier, they only list articles that are published in Elsevier. So if I identify few of the top publisher, perhaps Emerald, and this is how you will search paper from Emerald. So going back to the slides, another key elements are the documentation on how SLR document their search strategy so that readers can access it, explicit criteria, and also the information specification. What are the information that you want to get? Are you looking at the methodological gap? Then you focus on the methodology section of each of these articles. And the research question, this is suggestion for research question. I mean, again, as I've told you, it must have specific research question. Therefore, you know the boundaries of your research SLR works. Details to collect, usually we collect publication details, study design, population details, theoretical framework, research setting, target group, and outcome and finding. And by talking about that, I'm going to show this is actually an Excel file that I usually share with my students, where this is actually they will identify, they will start doing papers. So these are the papers. Yep. And they will list down the year, volume, issue, authors, title, the scope of the study. Sorry, let me enlarge it. Okay, title, scope of study, research objective, research issues, research gap. And then for the LR, the study dependent variable, what are the independent variables, the method, what are the study population, unit of analysis, are they doing quantity or quality research design, sampling method, data analysis, and for the result, what are the findings, conclusion, what are the limitation, what are the future studies, what are the theoretical implication, what are the practical implication. So you can see here that if you able to gather 100 papers here, you will be able to identify what are their research issues, what are the gaps, and what are the theory that been used, and what are the dependent variables, what are the independent variables, what are the study population, and the most important thing is this: what are their limitation that actually create the gaps, what are the future studies. This is where you are going to argue that researchers propose to do this, to do that, and what are the implication that actually can support your chapter 5 arguments. So where is my page? Okay. So this is just a list, but I will definitely, I'm happy to share my Excel for all of you. I mean, again, this is what I consider as sadaqah and wakaf, apa nama, education for you guys. And these are the data sources that I would like you guys to focus on. I mean, you may focus on these three: Scopus, Web of Science, Science Direct, Emerald, Taylor's, Francis, Springerling, and Sage Journal. This is what I consider as A journals, where most of these publisher publish good research, legitimate research, which will be beneficial because they have gone through thorough reviews, rigorous review, and most of them utilize the right way of doing research. And the review, I mean, again, remember that the review phase is very important. There are cases that you might get 2,542 articles, but at the end of the day, you only review 13 papers. Yep. So this is somehow a very tedious work, yeah. But at the end of the day, it's very, what we say, contributing, especially to your thesis, to your understandings, yeah, of the research area. In order to report, the paper will have one section for the mapping of report, another for the systematic. Usually we will provide the insight about the paper and content selected for that, and usually we can use charts, table. I mean, if you're doing meta-analysis, you will be able to do that. So assuming that you can report that based on 100 papers, majority of the papers actually actually utilize quantitative data analysis. Only a few, like maybe perhaps less than 20 papers utilize qualitative methodology, and these papers are quite recent. I mean, they were published in 2021 or 2022. These very short and precise arguments or findings actually can justify to during your viva of why do you opt to use qualitative or quantitative. You know, you might argue that the reason why you want to use qualitative because the lack numbers of papers using qualitative, and there is high the usage of qualitative is trending with the current research. That's a very strong statement, and this statement was supported by studies that was, I mean, the SLR that actually review 100 papers. But again, perhaps you will also use the same information to support the argument why you want to do quantitative research. Perhaps you can say that 80 out of 100, 80 papers actually use quantitative, showing how popular quantitative research within this topic. And based on the 20 papers that are using qualitative, even though there is like an uptrend of their popularity, but their findings are limited on certain aspects. That is actually a strong statement why you want to use quantitative method. Yep. And in order to publish your result, you can find what journals, conference that used to publish them, and the latest SLR paper. I think that a lot of people right now are accepting SLR. I do know that some of you have experience publishing conceptual papers. I mean, your chapter 1, 2, 3, where at the end of the day you propose your framework, but it is not actually acceptable right now, especially among Scopus Index and Web of Science Index journals. Yeah, and most of them has moved away from that and focus on SLR because they found that SLR actually attract high citations. Yeah, and you can prepare based on what have been published lately. If you want to make a huge SLR, only part for you will be published by a journal conference. Yes, you could do that. I mean, you could gather like 2,000 journals articles, but you can try to. I don't think that I should use this term, but you can salami slice the result by focusing on certain aspect. Perhaps if you want to do that, you could do that. Yep. And the overall part of the content can be included in your thesis volume. Yep. Okay. So I think before we move on, yep, I'm going to show, or should I stop and focus on some question before I move on to example of papers that actually publish SLR output? Azmin?
So right now there is no question in the chat box, but if any participant have any question, feel free to ask.
Anyone? Or should I be calling names as usual? Is there any standard format for published paper? Yes. After this, I'll be showing you different type of papers format that publish SLR. There are a lot, actually quite a few. Yep. Thank you, Surya. Anything else? So may I know how many of you did SLR for your thesis? Wow, it's like a haunted mansion. Well, it's okay, no worries. Perhaps later.
Okay, tapi sorry tadi.
Tuan Mat, yes.
Ada soalan Zafi. Apa ni tadi saya lambat tadi, sorry.
Tak apa.
Saya nak tahu perbezaan lah between this SLR kan. Jadi this SLR dengan normal journal article yang kita buat. Basically, because kalau based on what you have mentioned, you just share dengan kita orang tadi, it's like macam benda tu is like macam tak banyak beza saya tengok dengan normal journal article yang kita buat tu.
Okay. Yeah, actually, it's actually quite similar with what you have done, but the only problem that if you want to publish your literature review as SLR is that you did not follow the guidelines. You don't have any protocols. Let me ask you, Tuan Mat, how did you do your literature review? Do you have any protocols?
Basically, tak ada protokol lah.
Yes.
Right.
So yeah, so that's the biggest difference between literature review and systematic literature review, because it have the word systematic, and the data, the literature was collected systematically. So, but again, it doesn't. I mean, if you can explain how you identify your papers, and you can explain that you did it systematically, that shouldn't be a problem. But again, SLR papers actually should started with your what we say protocols, and they need to follow the Prisma. Prisma to you can clear lah. If you have that information, I don't see any problem for you to publish papers. But there are also ways for publishing review papers, and I'll be sharing later. Is it fine if we exclude SLR journal in exclusion criteria, or we need to include? Okay. Yeah, that's a good topic, because my example, the aim is to review SLR papers, but most of you are doing something on topics, some on topic, maybe perhaps technology adoption and tourism, or tourism technology adoption and hospitality. Do you know that that is actually quite a concern among researchers, that SLR papers does not introduce any new information. They just conclude new information. That's the right term. Because empirical study actually provide new information, new findings. But SLR actually compile past research and try to make their own conclusion, meaning that this information were historical information. I would definitely ask you to include them. But at the end of the day, you need to differentiate them, that these are not empirical paper, they are SLR papers, and SLR papers should be your best friend. As a postgraduate student, SLR paper is the actually a good news, because during my time while I'm doing my PhD, there is very limited SLR, and I have to do my own SLR. I mean, without any rigorous protocol as they issue with Tuan Ahmad, but SLR actually give a lot of information to you, and you may try to compare what been informed by these SLR papers and what have you found by your own SLR. Perhaps you can see any difference in their findings, and this will be a very good information for you to jumpstart your thesis writing. Yeah. I think that should explain Betty information. Delicious, delicious nama pun delicious ni. I mean, at beginning buat SLR but get lost. The reason why you get lost because you don't have the inclusion and exclusion criteria, the protocols. So if you limit your I mean you set the research objective scope to a specific scope, that will be good, because it's rather than focusing on a broad research objective, you should be very specific. That's the reason why many people get lost, because everything can fall under under the umbrella of tourism and technology adoption. But if you go with specific tourism tour agencies, technology adoption, meaning that you're going to focus on tour operators within the realm of tourism that actually adopt technology, that you are going, you make it smaller. Yeah, talking about dark tourism, or perhaps you can try to make it much smaller, where you focus on dark tourism and museum. No. Okay. And Muhammad Noor, it is fine if we exclude SLR. Yeah, I think for Muhammad Noor, I think I answered that. If I use SLR in my paper, the protocol should be written. Yes, in your methodology. SLR paper have methodology. I'll show you later. I think that's answer, Lorna. Okay. While we wait for question, I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to show to you example of papers. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to show to you. This is a systematic literature review paper, but it was written as a research note. A research note is less than 2,000 words, very short, where the proposal is to propose a tourism destination competitor towards a performance-based approach. This is published by me and also my supervisor. Okay, so this is published by Tourism Economics, a Q1 journal. This is my name. This is my supervisor. So you can see that the abstract start off with the problem statement, determining the destination competitor is vital to a place, blah, blah, blah. The purpose of the study is to design performance-based destination competitiveness measurement grounded by competitiveness theory, meaning that I'm going to focus on the competitiveness theory literature. Okay, this article asserts that a significant measurement of destination is performance. Then the article integrate previous research in the field to propose a conceptual framework. Boleh lagi. Kita masih lagi boleh propose a conceptual framework. Yeah. So very short preamble. Rather than using introduction, I use preamble. So most of the time, I start with my problem statement. What others have been saying, and perhaps I started with prior study. This is my literature review, as my systematic literature review that I conclude and I start reporting. While there seems to be a consensus on the definition of competitiveness, this statement come from my finding. I found that out of 200 plus article, some majority of them got some sort of like consensus on the definition of competitiveness, but they are confused about the establishment and measurement concept of TDC due to the complexity of it. This information, this statement will not be there without SLR. Okay, but for this paper research note, I did not have any methodology section because research note does not need method. Tetapi I also list what are the paper that I actually look, you know. So these are actually very limited because they are actually the main player that talk about TDC. I published this paper in 2016, 17, 16, but the reason why the literature was in 2013 because this paper, this article was submitted in 2013. Yeah, submitted 2013, accepted 2013, published 2 years later. Okay, so very short, and then this is actually a proposal. So how does the proposal should look like? I mean, the performance and everything. So this is a very short paper. Yeah. And the next paper I'm going to show, this is a paper done by a colleague of mine. This is my ex-student, yeah, that are currently attached with UNIZA, Shahira Mio, Muaz, and then myself, and also one Azim. So this paper is published by Competitiveness Review Q2. It's a comprehensive review on tourism destination competitiveness literature. You see, this is actually, they just focus on TDC literature, and the purpose, the study aimed to provide current and organized insight into past publication, meaning that you can actually report based on what have been done. Okay, design methodology approach, a comprehensive review was performed by systematically gathering the literature published from 1983 to 2021, papers published from 1983 to 2021, and coded according to categories such as author, year, article title, name of journal, and TDC determinants. Yeah, and what are the findings? The key findings of the review reveal that no universal set of items. This is what we found. Attribute or indicators to measure the competitiveness of tourism destination exists. The complexity and variability of many definition. Nampak tak? Jawapan itu sama macam paper saya yang pertama tu. Okay. Ini paper yang baru, baru dipublish pada tahun 2021. Bila ya? Lupa dah ni paper ni. Paper ni baru ni, tahun lepas saja. Okay. So nampak tak? A limitation. Research work considered in the study are only from index and peer-reviewed journal publication. This shows that kita eliminate, buang semua artikel that are not indexed by Scopus or Web of Science. Okay, so what we did is that we start with introduction. What is tourism destination competitiveness? Yeah, and then what are the overview of tourism destination competitiveness? What have been done? What are the underpinning theory, Porter, Crouch, and Ritchie. And then we use Ritchie and Crouch, and then we have Dwyer and Cream. These are all what we say expert guru in competitiveness. And then we have Heath 2003, and then we start with Gorshen Sugiarto 2005, where they come up with the CM model, competitiveness model, and their paper, their proposed model was adopted while World Travel and Tourism Council, where they are the one who actually right now are publishing Travel and Tourism Competitiveness Index. If you are a tourism student, you should know about this, where they identify these are the factor, the attributes to determine competitiveness of a tourism destination. So all been discussed, and these are the method. I'm going to show you on the method. Yeah. So what happened here? The argument, we need to start to argue why we started from 1983. Yeah. Why? Because Hati and Yavas identified the based on Finland and particular European countries. Dah ada study yang start pada tahun 1993, and from there and Havas, Hati and Yavas was actually the one who make the groundbreaking work of Crouch and Ritchie. So Crouch and Ritchie ni been inspired by Hati and Yavas. On this basis, kita fokus pada 1983 and 2021. Yeah, the systematic literature review was conducted on relevant appendix. Nanti I akan show appendix. The rationale of using SLR is thoroughly analyzed the evolution. So let's look here. This is what we propose. And the authors gathered data from electronic search for scientific research published article via Google Scholar search engine. Okay. So what happens that the term used for the data reduction process was tourism destination competitiveness. Yeah, and the SLR began with the up-to-date research published in 2021 to recognize the TDC execution literature. And then what we did is that the following stage was choose to eliminate research that did not fulfill the search condition. Yeah, and from that, a total of 1991 article was collected. Yep, here. Okay, with their title abstract analyzed. Next, the reading process requires skimming through title, abstract, keyword, first paragraph, and text from relevant section. So from there, daripada satu dapat 80 usable research. Okay, and this article was processed via content analysis assessment, where they focus on author year artikel. Ini yang macam dalam table saya tu. Table saya tu kita fokus pada this topic. So this Syahirah ni, she did very well lah. She did very well. She did good. This is actually an excerpt from her thesis. So kita report descriptive analysis. Ini adalah jurnal yang kita jumpa yang publish title apa study yang buat on competitiveness. TDC ya. So we have 80, and then we highlight the trends, numbers of publication. You can see that the uptrend started from 2010. And in 2021, the numbers is getting higher and higher, which shows that the relevancy of tourism destination competitiveness study. Yeah. Content analysis, they report what are these are the study that have been searched. Yeah. And we focus on what are the attributes that been governed by these studies. So we report by content analysis. Yep. Okay. And the discussion actually propose what are the new things that you should focus. Future research direction actually argues on what's next. So Syahirah, actually the Syahirah study actually focus on that future studies should look on tourism destination image, quality of tourism experience, tourist loyalty. That should be embedded in apa nama TDC studies. This is example of study, yeah? Conclusion. So this paper was submitted. This paper was quite lucky. It was submitted to competitiveness review. I think we did receive some rejection from other Q1 paper, but this paper was revised, I think 3 times. I think Syahirah pun nak nangis. I mean, she was so disappointed with the revision, but again. I tried my best to motivate the authors, because at the end of the day, the revision actually improved the quality of your paper. Another good paper is this. Where is it? What happened here? Okay. So this is a paper that published even together with them. Only this time around, Muaz is the first author. Published by Abjit, Asia Pacific Journal of Innovative Hospitality and Tourism, a Q4 Scopus journal. A systematic review on tourism network, knowledge transfer, absorptive capacity, and performance. So it's the same thing. Introduction. Oh, sorry. I think in Syahirah paper, there is an appendix here. Last. Where is the appendix? I'm going to show to you the appendix. Yes. This is what the list of 80 papers. This is the appendix. So this is the research variable that they look into. So this is how we do it. Yep. So we started from recent until past research. Okay, you can see that it's from 2021 until 1983. Okay, so looking on Abjit, literature review, talking about the concept, but methodology sama juga. This study adopted SLR, similar to meta-analysis. The study followed Miles and Hilberman approach. Okay, this article the article survey were retrieved from Google Scholar. So how the advanced search terms were used: tourism networks, knowledge transfer, knowledge absorption capacity, and tourism performance. This is much complex because they have multiple keywords. So how they put it here: tourism network knowledge. Yeah, this is how you search in you put this in your search engine. Okay, and they search from major database such as Wiley, Taylor, Francis, Search, Emerald, and Elsevier. Okay, and focus on 2000 until 2021, and which combine 247 downloadable articles. Okay, So consequently, only 20 empirical were found. You can see that out of 200 plus, only 20 paper were included. This is where they report it. Yep, these are all the articles. Okay, so and report the result. And usually highlight, discuss what other, and talk about the study implication. How does this finding actually allow us to do future studies? Okay, and last but not least is a paper published by my PhD student, Dr. Farah Dewi, yeah, in ERA journals, a systematic review. And I think this paper has been cited, I think, quite fast. So this study actually, this systematic review on the evolution of technology acceptance and usage model, meaning that they are not looking on what are the current trend. They are just look on the evolution, how technology acceptance and usage model was evolved in consumer behavior study. So introduction, talking about technology and business, methodology. This paper uses a systematic analysis approach, yang mana we talk about the relevant prominent technologies and concentrate on evaluating the evolution of the acceptance model on how they, by comparing the core construct of these models. So what are the prominent technology model? These are the things that we found from starting from 1962 until the UTOP 2 2012, and we started elaborating what is IDT and what are the critics, what does the critics say. So, and the reason why it was moved towards TRA. Yep. And this is a model, social cognitive theory. Okay. And until the end, we reported everything until UTOP 2. And we try, our contribution is comparison between the two. What are the new thing, different thing. Yep, you can see here. And what are the limitation of these theories? And propose, I would say that you propose a framework to reflect the process of evolutions, and conclude. Okay, so I think I've shown quite a few, but before we end up, I'm going to share the typology of literature review. So you can see here, there are many type of reviews available. Narrative review. I mean, I did talk about systematic review. We have scoping review, which is actually quite similar with meta-analysis, umbrella review, and realist review and critical review. The one that I did not share actually reflect studies or review done by experts. And most of the time, papers that were written by experts that have like 20 years experience would be easily been accepted by journal publishers. Yeah, I think that's actually what I would like to share. But I would like to end up my session. Try to motivate the students here. We have 85 students here. I believe that you know, in doing research, you need to motivate yourself. I mean, I know I've seen some comments saying that you let go your SLR. I mean, you abandon it. But again, you need to understand that doing SLR is actually something that it takes time. You know, it's a step by step. You know, and brick by brick and drop by drop. This is what we say. I mean, as while doing that, you are going to start learning new things. You will start to improve your understanding of your research area, and you need to understand that it is you will see the task of doing SLR too big, but while doing it, you will know that it's actually quite easy. And after a while, you can start juggling this thing. I mean, you can start doing small research project of SLR. But again, the biggest issue here is to overthinking. When you see the numbers, 2,200, oh, I'm going to read 200 papers. But again, if you did not start, you will not strive. Yep. And perhaps you fail. I mean, when you want to get this data, you will fail. But as you move on, you will found resolutions, and you will be resolute on what you are going to do. But again, you need to understand that there's a lot of failures happening because many of us still thinking that you are not ready, you are not ready yet. But at the end of the day, if you are not moving, you are not going anywhere. Yeah, and perhaps this is based on my experience. Whenever during my learning process of PhD, I always say push myself to do things fast. And one thing that I learned, there are certain things that you have to let it be, and when time comes, it will come, So yep, then there will be one moment that actually changes, where when you start getting the data, when you start understanding what you're doing, and oh, this is what I actually looking at, and the articles that were not found suddenly been found after 2 years of searching. These are the things. And usually thinking takes time, but the time of doing things is actually very, very short, very, very fast. Yeah. And as a student, you will fail, definitely, and fail actually taught you things, taught you to become a better person. But you need to look at the bigger things, where you need to look on the success part of your life. And somehow the reason why we tend to make failure because we tend to imagine failures, but actually the problem is actually very small. It is pursuable. Yep. And perhaps this is where the first step. I know the thing that I share with you is quite new. Perhaps your research methodology lecturers does not actually talk about this. Perhaps they touch on this, but again, it's not easy, but it's not hard. Yeah, and you should start doing it now, step by steps. And yeah, there will be ups and downs. The time that you found article, the time that you did not find any articles, the time that you are moving fast, the time that you are not doing nothing, but just enjoy the process. And eventually, by collecting one single article day by day, in 1 year, you're going to collect 365 papers. So imagine if you collect more than 1 papers. Imagine if you collect more than 5 papers per day. Yeah, so you can, those are things that you could achieve. Yep. So with that, thank you very much for listening. I'll be sharing the slides and also all the papers and also the templates for you to use. I hope today's lectures benefits you, and I'm open for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mohd Hafiz Mohd Hanafiah. So we have quite several questions posted in the chat box.
Yep. Since what? Okay, so, I think 11:13, yeah. I think I answered long now. So Muhammad Naj, Muhammad Naj. Doctor, how do I report SLR? To show that I've already put in serious research effort, which review methodology and publication standards such as Roses, Cochrane, yep, best fit our field. Cochrane is always used by medical researcher. I think the best is Prisma. The best is Prisma. And the only way of putting your research, your serious research effort in writing is in the method section. You have to elaborate the steps taken, making sure that the reviewer and the reader understand that you follow your protocols and you understand they understand what the inclusion and the exclusion criteria. They want to know how come from 100 papers you only focus on 10 papers. Why? So as long as you are able to answer that, and you are able to identify the limitation of your study, that should be good enough. Anissa, is it okay if we only use SR to build new concept to fill the gap without correcting field? Yes, yes. It's all that's the thing that I highlighted before, Anissa. So Anissa actually from Anissa is from Brawijaya, I think. Anissa, am I correct?
Correct, Prof.
Yeah. So SLR actually based on historical data. So you can use the findings of this historical data to propose. And your proposal perhaps can be confirmed by you in another research where you took that proposal and test it empirically. Or perhaps if you want to do that, you just prepare a paper to propose that conceptual, and perhaps people like me, people like Azmin, yeah, who take the challenge. I mean, we found, oh, let's test Anissa proposal, and we collect data, primary data, and test it. And we will support or against your study proposals. That's how research is all about. That's, I mean, that's a good question, Anissa. And Atika, about the narrative review, is it usually written by expert? My question: if the student write narrative, is it going? Narrative. I have to say this. I mean, there's no harm to test. You know, the way how researcher or reviewer, you need to understand that when you submit your paper to journals, your paper will be reviewed blindly, without any author's information. No one know who are you. So the only thing that we can, I would say, assume whether you are an expert or you are a novice is based on your writing skills and how you justify your thing, how you justify your write-up. So if you are good in writing, I've seen a lot of young new researchers who are able to publish their papers using narrative review. There's no harm to try. But again, polish your writing. But the best thing is to learn is to look at other papers, narrative papers that has been published by top journal. Follow the way, the lingo of how they write their papers. Yeah. Okay. Yep. We have more questions. All these are thank you. Okay. Thank you, Rajesh Kanda. I agree with you. I have another. I think. Let me share one more time. I think I have that in my slides. Yeah, I think so. This is the Prisma 2019 checklist. So you can take this also. So this is Prisma checklist. So if you follow this and you state it in your method, shouldn't be a problem. Okay. So I don't see any more question. Do we have any verbal question from the participants?
I think one question, how is SLR different from usual literature review we do, since basically we use literature review to support and conclude our findings?
Yeah, that's a good question, Azmin. I mean, you're talking based on your experience. Now I'm going to investigate how you do your LR. So Azmin, can you tell me, how do you write your LR?
So basically, we just search from the available search engine, Google Scholars, Scopus, Science Direct. So then we just type the keyword.
Okay.
Then for the keyword, we just browse through a relevant topic and just take the paper and read maybe the abstract and just trying to find the relevant topic, and then we just write it down and compare with each other.
There you go. The keyword here, the missing keyword here is systematic. How you search? Do you search your literature systematically? No.
Yeah.
Do you use specific keywords?
I don't understand.
No. You know, so those are the things. So the biggest difference between what you have done in your LR chapter and also your SLR is the way how you collect those data. So what we have right now, like Azmin have right now, is a bunch of literature review, good literature review perhaps, but without systematic methods to collect it. So that shows his inability to publish that literature review in the article journal. But if you know SLR is a good thing, Azmin, perhaps if let's say we have time machine, we go back to your first year, you will definitely start off by doing these protocols, isn't it? So sorry. So with that protocol, your literature review will look much structured. Yep, and you know where to search to support your arguments. At the same time as at the end of your thesis, you will be able to publish the literature review because you have used specific method to do that. That is the biggest difference of what you have done and what I have done.
Okay. Is there any more question from the participant? So I think if there is no more question, I think that's conclude our session today.
Yep.
So we have posted the attendance link, and you can fill the attendance form to receive the e-certificate. So I hope that all the participant today receive some of the benefit regarding the systematic literature review introduction, and I hope that you can use those information to help you in your postgraduate journey. So with that, I would like to thank Associate Professor Dr. Mohd Hafiz Mohd Hanafiah for spending some of his time to guide and give some of his expertise as well as his knowledge regarding this important topic. So thank you, Dr. Hafiz, for joining and become our speaker today. And to all the participant, thank you for joining us today. And I hope that this is a fruitful session for you today. So thank you to all participants, and I hope that you will have a great weekend. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Azmin, and thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you,
My
Dr.
student
Hafiz.
is currently defending her Viva right now. This is.
Ada.
Thank you,
Okay.
Doctor.
Thank you. Salam.
Thank you, Doctor. Oh.